Welcome to Living Life to Its Fullest, where we share information about how the profession of occupational therapy can help our community and beyond. I'm Amy Mayer, owner of Mayer Wellness and Myofascial Release. This is my co-host Janel Meis, founder of The Toy Box. And today we are going to focus on how to help your child excel in a sensory-rich environment.
Yes, so first a little bit about myself. I've been a pediatric occupational therapist for 7 years, and I primarily work with kids who have sensory processing disorders, and then I also like to do aquatic therapy intervention. So much like Amy said, today the focus is helping parents understand how they can create a sensory-rich environment to help their child excel. So
What exactly does this mean?
Oh yeah, so this is kind of complicated.
This is new to me. I'm not a pediatric therapist, so it's probably new to a lot of other OTs that don't work in this area, plus families, parents, grandparents,
Yes.
and beyond.
So what I mean by creating a sensory-rich environment is allowing yourself to have a greater awareness, and I call it attunement, to the senses around you and how they're used throughout your day. So we'll kind of describe all the senses, and then I'll show you some examples of using our senses and then explain how they're used in play with a child. So for me, really, this is to help parents understand how they can create these sensory-rich environments with play.
Okay.
Yes, so we use our senses every day. Some of them help heighten our awareness, they increase our arousal in what we're doing. Other ones help calm us and make us feel nice and calm and regulated, like a weighted blanket that's nice and soft and fluffy. Kids like those.
So that means, like, when I'm having trouble getting going in the morning, I'll put some peppy music on
Yes.
to try and up my system a little
Exactly.
bit, wake me up and put me in a better mood, that
Yes.
kind of thing.
Exactly. So, and she's using her auditory sense or her hearing.
Or at night, before I go to bed, I have a cup of tea to
Yes.
relax me, or take a
Mhm.
hot bath
Yeah.
to relax me so I sleep better.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you've developed strategies that you use throughout your day to make you feel good and feel like the just right homeostasis, harmony in your body,
Okay.
and how you go about your day. So some kids, or the kids that I work with who have difficulties with this, can have lots of behavioral reactions to certain things that people don't even know is doing it. It could just be like a light brush on their arm, and they just would like really freak out and like try and smack you in that capacity. So what you've done, which is great, is you've created an environment that allows you to excel. And so having an awareness of your senses and how they help you throughout your day can improve your success.
Okay, so you're saying that some kids that maybe are demonstrating a behavior issue, it could be related to how they process the information coming to them from a sensory perspective.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so tell us more about that.
So sensory drives motor. So that's kind of the biggest thing in that
Sensory
regard.
drives motor, what does
Yes,
that
so your sensory, kind of like the touch example that I gave earlier, so if you brush the side of the arm, you'll have a reaction to it. You'll create
a motor reaction.
Yes,
I'll
create a, yes.
Either punch you back, or move away,
Yes.
or
Or be
say,
fine.
"Oh, excuse me.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, so I get it, so sensory
Yes.
drives motor.
Mhm.
Okay.
So let's look at the senses. So everyone primarily knows the 5 main senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. Those are the 5 like go-to. But in occupational therapy, many of us use different, or there's 3 other ones that we use. And the first 2 is your vestibular system and then your proprioceptive system. And then the third one is your interoception. And that's actually one that I'm still increasing my knowledge base on. I don't know a ton about it, but
You're probably still going to have to explain the others.
yeah, because they're weird fancy words.
Yeah, but not a lot of people know about, so it's okay if you don't know those terms. Okay.
Yes, so let's actually go through each of them, and I'll kind of give an example for all of them. So vision, pretty basic, what we see. So like in this picture, there's like some burnt orange and teal. So you can tell that the color is there. So you use your eyes to see.
So when you're talking vision for a kid, though, it's not just what they're looking at. Is it everything else in the background as well?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
So, and a lot of times, I mean, if you go into a pediatric clinic, there's a ton of equipment, a lot of things are very bright and overstimulating. And for some, again, remember they either like heighten us or they are calming to us, how we use our senses.
Okay.
So for some kids, going into a large room that has all these different multicolored things and the ball pits and all that stuff can be very overwhelming, and so you might see them in a smaller treatment room.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So next is sound, so what we hear. And one thing to note with sound too is, like you mentioned in the morning, the sound volume or like the amplitude, like how loud you play it, what type of music, also has an impact on how you feel and how you internally process your information. Next is the touch, or how we process what we feel. So thinking of things like soft, smooth, hard, and whatnot. The fourth one, taste, what we taste when we eat. So is it bitter, sour, sweet, salty? Then we have smell, so smelling the flowers, all the different foods we cook throughout our day. Detergent, I have a very sensitive smell.
I do too.
So I use unscented, and then there are other people that can't get enough of the flavored scent.
Yes.
So it depends on you and how you tick, basically. The sixth one, which it's one of those three that fall outside of the normal five, is the vestibular system. And so this is all within our inner ear and how we deal with movement and our posture. So you can be in forward, you can spin around, and whether or not you're sitting up, lying down, and moving back and forward. Then there's one of the examples I use for the vestibular system is a swing. So do you like to go on a swing at the park, or your child, grandchild, whatever it may be, do they like to just go on a regular swing where it goes nice and calming back and forth? Or they would rather go on the merry-go-round where it's going to spin them this way? Or do they like the tire swing that's just on the one single suspension that they can spin themselves?
What if they don't like any of those, or is that a question for later?
No, that's a great question. So if they don't like any of those, I don't get immediately alarmed. But most people, we have to move throughout our day, so if it's creating a difficult situation for the family and the child can't even move at all without parents carrying them or needing some kind of other input to help them, then I'd be concerned. But if they just might not have a preference to really heighten their vestibular system. So it's a fine line of figuring out is it a problem or is it just they're fine?
Okay. Well, I put up a swing for my grandson and he doesn't want to swing.
And all absolutely nothing? Come on!
So maybe he'll want to swing someday, I guess.
No, well does the swing touch the ground?
No.
He might like it if he can put his feet on the ground so he has a stable base so that he's in control of the swing. Yep, so that he can go, he can spin or rock himself first, and then as he builds up the awareness to how it feels and it doesn't heighten him too far, he might actually enjoy it.
Love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
you're
keep going.
The next one is the proprioceptive system, so understanding where our body's at in space. It ties to our muscles and joints.
Is that kind of like when you reach out for the light switch at night, you kind of know where your body is even though you can't see it, you can feel it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then for kiddos, the best example I like to use for proprioception is crawling, because they are on their hands and their knees, and so they're getting input through their wrist, all the way through the elbow, shoulder, and also with their knees and their hips as they finagle around the environment. So
Okay.
I have a lot of kids crawl all the time. It's one of my
Okay.
favorites.
And they can't see their body, but they still know where it is.
Right.
Okay.
So every time their hand hits the ground, they're like, oh yeah, that's where my wrist is, that's my elbow. They don't consciously think about that. They're probably like, what's your wrist? But that added input increases their awareness to where their limb is at in space.
Got it. Cool.
Yes. And then interoception, like I mentioned earlier, it's not really my area of expertise by any means, and I'm still trying to figure out all of the inner workings of it, but it deals with all the internal organs working together harmoniously. So heart rate, digestion, thirst, hunger, and elimination. And then all of that kind of can deal with how your ability to process emotion as well. So
does that mean if I'm distracted because I'm hungry, that can affect my ability to process all these other senses at the same time?
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe I am a Pete's therapist.
I think she is. Or she's just really good at all the things.
Okay, all right, keep going.
Yes,
Tell us more.
okay.
This is really interesting.
It's a good time. I love the senses. They're just, it's not a cookie cutter approach. It doesn't work for everyone. Everybody's different. We do the things the way we do them for a reason, and whether or not we are consciously aware of it is a whole other ballgame. But I'll provide some resources at the end too if you want to just learn about your own sensory systems and whatever age you are as well. So
Okay.
let's look at, I brought some things in
What's in
my,
the bag?
yeah, in the bag. So what I want to do is, I'll pull out a different item. Most of them are toys because that's what we play with kiddos, and describe the senses that are used while you play with that, or different strategies and whatnot.
Okay.
And then real briefly before we do that, just noting that, again, there's a variance for kiddos. So some kids will like it, like your grandson on the swing might not like it because he can't put his feet on the ground, or he's not in control of it. So it fluctuates. So it might work for some kids and it won't work for others.
And that brings up a good point of something that occupational therapists specialize in is what we call grading activities. So the example of having a swing, but grading it to the child, of having him put his feet on the ground, and then making it more challenging would be making it so he
Yes.
can't, or so it swings farther.
Yep.
Or okay,
Absolutely.
all right.
So
Cool.
making it easier and harder and all the things. So let's do.
But we're always trying to find, as occupational therapists, that just right challenge for our clients.
Yes.
So it challenges them so that we get progress, but it's not so challenging that it's frustrating.
Yes, and so the first one I pulled out is wooden blocks, and I just had something I was going to say, but I'm blanking on. We'll come back to it. The blocks are primarily great, or like let's go through our senses and figure out which ones first, and then I'll explain it a little bit more. Any thoughts on what you think for like what sensory systems it works on? Putting her on the spot.
Tactile,
Yes.
visual, because
Yes.
they're
So
colored.
touch. Yes.
You could probably hear them when they fall. But
Yes.
it's probably not a primary, I would
No,
guess.
but it's still
Okay.
great.
Okay.
You can. Let's let Amy do it.
Just keep going.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Keep going.
No, I love it.
Okay.
Honestly, so most of the time you're never going to work on just one sensation. There's always a ton that a child has experienced that we experience every day. So, like you said, yes, we have touch, we have vision, we have proprioception. Like, can they put the block on top of the other one? Also
Gently, so
using
it doesn't
their
fall over.
using
Okay.
their visual system too in that regard. Can they gauge how far or close it is to the child? Blocks are just great because they allow a ton of creativity. And then, like you said, when they knock it over, you hear the sound of it falling. And I don't know, they're just great. One of my faves.
Okay, cool.
So I got blocks. Next is a puzzle. Also great. Immediately my thought is the visual system. So this one's actually cool. I still have it wrapped. I should probably unwrap it. But there's a little like magnet piece on it that the child has to like scan and then put it on there. And then it pulls out the piece too. Another, you mentioned grading, so how we can make it harder for their visual system and their proprioception and motor planning is to have the pieces out, and then there you try and use the fishing pole to like put the pieces in, so they really have to manipulate with their body how it goes in there perfectly.
My grandson got one of these in his toy box.
Yes, you probably
And
did.
the way we graded it for him was he just held on to the magnet to pull the pieces out.
Yes.
And just working on that little grippy because he wasn't quite ready yet for
Yes.
holding the fishing pole.
Yes, which is perfect.
Yeah.
Next, bubbles. So this one, I love bubbles mainly because it's a great calming activity if the child is blowing the bubbles or if you're blowing it. Oral motor activities are very calming, so anything with your mouth, it usually helps regulate your sensory system. Kids love bubbles, so if they're blowing them or if they're having them blown to them, then they're using their visual system to kind of see where it is. If they're up and moving, so they're chasing the bubbles, their vestibular system, can they stand up without falling? They can turn and rotate, no problem. They can get up and down. They can smack the bubble on the ground without any problem and stand right back up. I'm trying to think if there's anything else with the bubbles.
Yeah, my grandson loves, though he got bubbles in his toy box too, and he loves bubbles. He loves the whole chasing them and grabbing them, and I can just really see his development over time, just how he can chase the bubble and actually smack it. That's the most fun part.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I caught it, it is mine, and it is wonderful. Another great sensory component is finger paint. So we'll get touch and tactile. I mean, all of these have touch in them too. I haven't really mentioned that. But this one, I chose this specifically for the touch. Again, if you put it on the ground and they have to weight bear through their arms as they're playing and like smushing the finger paint around, they'll get a greater input to their joints in their arms, and that's the proprioceptive system. So anything you can do on the ground where they're, in a crawling position or leaning and weight bearing and putting weight through their arms, it's super great for development. Anything else with the finger paint?
Yeah, finger paints are awesome.
You can't have enough of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably a disaster to clean up sometimes, but I do
Yes,
apologize.
I do have paints in places in my house where I didn't think I would have some paint, but that's okay. That's okay.
Next are just different balls. So these ones are like the squishy ones, and then they have like different, there's little fuzzies. Sorry. Different tactile feeling to them and squishiness, yeah. So again, the touch tactile system, some of them they are bouncy balls. You can jump on the floor and hear the auditory hearing component of them. There's none of my examples have taste in them, which is kind of hard, but there's a lot of things within the taste feeding world that I don't know a ton about because I don't do feeding.
But there are OTs who specialize in feeding and swallowing.
So like for me, I would do feeding with kids who have like a tactile aversion to some kind of food, like maybe they don't like the mushy food or they like the super crunchy, and we all have our preferences again. So that feeding I can do, but as far as like the mechanics of our muscles and everything, that's not my area of expertise. But there are OTs that do specialize in feeding it and swallowing, and they're brilliant. Last in my sweet bag is a book. So books are also one of my favorite things, but you can create a ton of different sensations with your book. So again, think about how you read to your child and the tone of voice you're using. Are you super excited, or are you going really fast, or is it slow? And make sure you use intonations to kind of heighten their auditory processing and how they're receiving auditory input. But that is all out of my bag of tricks.
Okay.
For right now.
So, is there anything else you wanted to say, or can I ask my question?
You can ask your questions, and then I have other things, but go ahead.
Okay, so as a parent or grandparent, how do I pick the best activity for my child? How do I choose?
That's a great question. So for you guys, what I would recommend is observing the child for a little while and see like what their preferences are. You might have to turn off the TV or hide the cell phone, because most kids would probably choose that one. And then just see kind of what they gravitate towards. I'm a firm believer of using their intrinsic motivation, so what they really like, what they gravitate towards. So I would see like what they explore in their environment, and if they're climbing up on the couches and like actually wanting movement, they might enjoy like vestibular and proprioceptive activities. So getting them a tunnel, using a swing, letting them do this puzzle as an obstacle course or a relay, where they're like running back and forth if they really like movement.
So if a child is climbing on things and seeking those kinds of things out, does that mean they need more of that? That's how they're self-developing? Is that what that means?
I wouldn't say they necessarily...
They're seeking it out for some reason.
Yeah, they like it.
It's a preference.
Yes, it's a preference. They don't necessarily, it's not a concern unless it impacts the child's ability to function, or if it's too much for the parents too, and they are noticing that their kid is just all over the place and they can't ever get them to just sit and attend and focus for a while, then they might benefit from an occupational therapy evaluation.
Okay, interesting. So what if your child is, or my grandson, and not that he's always doing, but what if a child is always leaning towards that, and they're maybe not using things or want things on their touching their body like paints or glue or.
Yes. So my biggest key component for that is to allow them to do it to themselves. So like if they need all of that input, make sure they are the ones that are providing it to themselves, so they're building those skills to help regulate how it feels versus somebody doing it to them.
Here, put your hand in this finger paint.
Yeah.
You just put it out there and let them
Yes.
dip a tip
Yeah.
of their finger in or something. Okay.
Yeah, so if you do hand over hand and like force them to do it, it won't be as successful as like maybe you play with the finger paint first and then allow them to explore, and then like slowly they'll get there just a little bit further every time.
Okay.
But if they, so I don't know if I really answered your question. As far as like the kids moving all the time, as long as it's not impacting function and it's not.
So build movement. If they prefer movement, but they don't do well with other types of touch things, then blend those things together somehow. Like you were saying, do the relay race.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
allow them to be in control of it.
Well, we probably have about 4 or 5-ish minutes left. What else do you have for us?
I would just like to touch on, so like we kind of explored, there's a bunch of different sensations that impact the kiddo throughout their day, and just be attuned to your preferences and then their preferences. I was talking with Amy earlier, and one example I had was little kids who are at home with mom throughout the day or dad. Well, the other one is working or whatnot, and you always have the TV on. Like that child is always hearing auditory input throughout their entire day. And so when they go to a classroom and they have to sit there and it needs to be completely quiet, how is that development impacting their classroom behaviors? Like, do they need that constant auditory thing? So then they might start making like, or they'll like start creating these different sounds to like fill that need. So again, this is all like my clinical reasoning and what I believe from what I've observed and seen, but I haven't done any research on it. Maybe someday. I'll add it to the list.
But that makes very logical sense, though.
Yes.
Very logical sense.
Yes.
So if a child, the same thing would be if the child is used to being inside all the time and then they're supposed to go to school and go outside for recess, they might struggle with the jungle gym or the.
Yes. And like starting and stopping activities too, and like how you transition within them as well, and like what kids need to transition successfully.
Okay. So if a parent has questions or sees something going on with their child, what should they do as far as getting a hold of somebody?
Great question.
Or look
yeah. So I encourage them to talk to their physician and see if they need an occupational therapy evaluation. My philosophy is it can never hurt if you are concerned or you're like noticing some things that just aren't quite right. Talk to your physician and see if you can get a referral to have an occupational therapy evaluation, and then you can come in and the OT will work with you, see what the child may or may not need. You might not need therapy, you might need some therapy intervention, and then they'll help you work through that, develop strategies to make it successful for you.
So they may come in and the occupational therapist may do an evaluation, say, no, what you're seeing is very normal.
Yes.
Or they might say, yes, we're seeing some things here, but here's some ideas you can do at home. Or they may say, yes, you should probably do some therapy for a little bit or maybe an extended time depending on the level of the issue. So any occupational therapist, or what's the skill set they need to be looking for? Because they wouldn't want to come see me.
That's correct. Well, I don't know. You did pretty great. I would just encourage you to find somebody that specializes in pediatrics first, and then if you're concerned about the senses or want to know anything about that, just make sure they have done continuing education or furthered their development in sensory processing disorders. So there are multiple certifications OTs can get throughout the country. Right now there's currently 3 different certifications. So I don't have any of mine yet, but I've done week-long intensives in multiple of them. So it's a
So yeah,
process.
call a facility that specializes in pediatrics, ask for an occupational therapist. You can always ask to speak to that occupational therapist directly, ask some questions about what they know, and get some advice to move forward.
Yes.
Anything else?
No, I think that's
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to
Yeah.
Living Its Life to Its Fullest.
Yeah.
And keep tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you.